Good afternoon and welcome. We're continuing this series on the COVID 19 lockdown talks on law. And I'm here at home, just like everybody else. So, yesterday we looked at the history of the e commerce in Malaysia and the law on e-commerce. As I've told you yesterday, in most cases, events or situations in society take place first before the law catches up. But in regards to e-commerce and electronic transactions, the law was put in place first, the infrastructure or the legal infrastructure, and events did not actually catch up. It seemed for a while that the cart was put before the horse, but now, due to the immense life-changing circumstances that has taken place in Malaysia and even globally, where the entire world is on lockdown, the value of these laws are heightened. Way back in 1997, right up to around 2000 or 2005, legislative framework and laws were set up for e-commerce, but it seems that at that time the e-commerce infrastructure throughout the country was lagging behind, and the laws that were put in place were ahead of its time. But now we can see that this infrastructure is very relevant, and although some of the laws may require quite a bit of updating, because in 1997 the government looked at e-commerce as confined to a certain area, namely Cyberjaya. But developments in technology have shown that you do not have to confine technological developments in one place to have a successful e-commerce in your country. As you can see, for example, Wi-Fi is now available in entire communities and even a city. But at that time, this facility of Wi-Fi was not available. At that time, actually, the technology at that time was you had to lay this piping. It's a silicon piping for internet coverage to be available throughout a certain region or state. But the technology improved, and the need for this kind of wiring was bypassed. Now you can get Wi-Fi just about anywhere. So the laws need to be aligned with what's actually happening. But the good thing is that there is a technological law framework for the government to update rather than to start from scratch. And yesterday I was talking about the medical profession where doctors need to look at bringing the clinic to your home, where initial diagnosis or medical problems can be done through using equipment like handphones and digital cameras. But way back in 1997, one particular act was passed which accommodated for this kind of development. It's just that after the passing of this act, nothing much was done, but this act was there, and if the government implements this act fully now, the medical profession, especially the private clinics, can see a revival, not in the traditional brick and mortar private clinics, but with the clinics going online to service and to provide medical services for a much larger number of people than in the traditional bricks and mortar, where patients have to go to the clinic, sit in the clinic for a certain period of time, sometimes hours, but usually a certain period of time before they can see the doctor. But now that is becoming a bit difficult or in fact very difficult because of social distancing. You go to a clinic and somebody is sick, and if they happen to be infected, and if the infection gets to you, what are you going to do? So this is where you can have the doctor come to your home through the internet facilities, through digital cam or through social chats, where they can do an initial diagnosis, and the medical service, the private medical service, can be made available 24/7. Of course, there's a difference between using a video cam to do a diagnosis and actual diagnosis when you go to the clinic and get treated. But as you know now, the key word or the trending term is no more touch but touchless. Okay, we are becoming a touchless economy, where the less or no touch, the more premium or more value. If you can render services without touch, you have a very important role to play in the economy. So that's why we need to look at this kind of technology and the laws, how to implement them. It's good that we have the laws, because otherwise it'll end up like the Wild Wild West, where everybody can do everything, and then scammers will come in, hackers will come in, and the whole thing can turn sour. Now, having said that, if the initial diagnosis using the multimedia or the digital equipment can give an idea to the physician that a more serious or you need to go to the clinic, then in this case the patient can go to the clinic for the condition which may be more serious. But most of this can be handled online, so that the doctor who sees the patient using multimedia or digital camera can make an analysis, and then he can send you the prescription, and you just need to go to the pharmacy and pick it up, which again can be done online or through delivery. You see how the things on the ground are beginning to change. And if this is implemented, a lot of doctors who even before the pandemic were in Malaysia were suffering a lot of financial problems because there was a lack of demand or things like that for medical services. A lot of doctors can actually revive back the economy by using e-commerce methods. So let us look at the Telemedicine Act 1997. This act is described as its long title as an act to provide for the regulation and control of telemedicine and for matters connected therewith. The concept of telemedicine is discussed in Section 2 of the Act. It is considered to be a new concept, although to some extent it has been practiced, this telemedicine thing, since the invention of the telephone. The Oxford Dictionary of New Words say that it was developed in the early 80s. It is usually defined in broad terms and comprised of two aspects, and these two aspects can be applied also to other professions when we look at whether we can practice our professions through social distancing. Whether social distancing is a barrier or in fact an advantage to the development of business. Now, the two aspects are, number one, medicine at a distance, and number two, a communication link. The Act defines the term in Section 2 as the practice of medicine using audio, visual, and data communications. See, 23 years ago, all this was already visualized. But what happened? Why wasn't these things implemented by the government thereafter? And why didn't businesses pick it up? Why didn't the medical profession pick it up? Why was it left? But someone 23 years ago or 24 years ago visualized these things, and that to me is a blessing, because now we don't have to start from scratch. We can when you go through some an old box containing a lot of stuff, and you come across some old book or memoir or souvenir, and then it brings to you memories or gives you ideas on how to go forward, some kind of treasure that you have discovered. And to me, this act, the Telemedicine Act 1997, is one of the treasures that we have in Malaysia now that we can use for life after the pandemic. So, the Telemedicine Act defines the term in Section 2 as the practice of medicine using audio, visual, and data communications. The definition at that time, it said, may give rise to problems because the phrase, the practice of medicine, is vague and undefined. Number two, the definition does not include the concept of medicine at a distance. And number three, it seems to apply to situations even where the medicine is practiced at a distance, that should not be within the concept and scope of the Act. Well, you got to take a practical approach here, and if you can't get into too much legal technicalities and trying to split hairs, because I think the Act is very clear as to how you can practice digital medicine. Now at that time, the literature of that time, it asks you to consider following examples. A person or a company advertises on the internet or sends email messages offering prescription drugs or non-prescription drugs or herbal remedies or weight loss programs. Then the other example, second one, Is the pharmacist dispensing medicine communicates with the patient by means of the patient's hearing aid. And thirdly, a friend of a patient telephones a doctor to find out what to do about the patient who's having an insulin reaction. Fourthly, a friend of a patient telephones the patient's wife to find out what to do about the patient who's having an insulin reaction. So, some of the problems that were highlighted is in the first example, either the person or the company practicing medicine by advertising their goods and services should advertisements in respect of some herbal remedies and weight loss programs be within the scope of the Act. Now, when you look at that question now, it seems to be a bit redundant. In fact, the provision of medical services can be expanded to include herbal, traditional remedies, and even weight loss, but subject to certification or approval by the relevant government agencies. Now, a major problem in the regulation and control and practice of the persons who practice it are from outside Malaysia. Some will conduct their practice through the medium of persons present in Malaysia. Others by means of internet and other communication links who relate directly to the patients in Malaysia. These persons are nevertheless subject to the Telemedicine Act. So, one of the issues in this Telemedicine Act, which perhaps needs a bit of legislative tweaking, is do you need to maintain, in order to have a business using clicks or using the multimedia, do you need to maintain a bricks and mortar establishment? Do you need to need to have a clinic, or can you bypass, because this will take into the account of costing, and in fact now it is encouraged that you're supposed to work at home. So how do you overcome this? So some legislative tweaking is required. Even at that time, and even now, it was said that this is a new area of law. Uncertainty as to legal and regular. Okay, it's getting a bit itchy because I'm using this face mask. Uncertainty as to legal and regularity aspects normally act as a deterrent to the use of telemedicine. The full potential of telemedicine will be underdeveloped if advances in legal standards and guidelines are not emphasized. And that's why I said that more legislative tweaking needs in this area. But this gives something for our lawmakers to do, how to promote and go into full e-commerce. You see the problem now is this virus has brought up two serious problems. One is a health problem and one is the economic problem. Because of the social distancing, because of this virus, people cannot congregate like before. So the impact on the health issue for the public, it also has an effect on the it has an effect on the commercial part or in the economy, because they are both like Peter and Paul. You can't have one without the other. The problems that arise in the health issue affect the economy. So, people like the leader of the United States of America is very concerned about how to start up the economy or how to get going in full blast in regards to the economy. And the situation is not a choice between one and the other. Rather, What the government needs to do, and the governments of the world, including government of Malaysia, is instead of trying to choose one against the other, what we need is a bridge. A bridge. That means, how do you maintain health, the health of the country in view of the pandemic, while still allowing for the survival and growth of business development. And the bridge here that they have to look at seriously is e-commerce. If everything can go online, if you can do things online even more, then most businesses may be able to get up on their feet. You still can have restricted movements, but because of the internet, you can continue business as usual. And this is what many people are not looking at yet. I guess they will address the situation along the line, but this is what they can do. And that's why looking at e-commerce laws are very important, because e-commerce, the development of e-commerce now offers a way out where it's not the most perfect way, but it's better than having nothing at all. Anyway, the full potential of telemedicine will be underdeveloped if advances in legal standards and guidelines are not emphasized and developed. Since telemedicine's outreach will increase over time, so will the increasing legal risk of medical malpractice litigation. But again, there is another bridge that we will cross when we come to it. But looking at medical malpractice litigation fundamentally rests on the establishment of a doctor and patient relationship. So then how do we establish that relationship? As we know now, you go and see the doctor and get advice. But then, what if the advice is totally electronic? For example, by sending an email communication, will that establish the doctor-patient relationship? And then the breach of professional duty. Will this include when the breach could be as a result of a failure or error of the communication link? Let's say the doctor sent a prescription using WhatsApp, but for some reason, though improbable but still possible, there was a miscommunication and the patient got the wrong prescription, and there was consequences. So this is where the legislative framework needs to sit down and look how to overcome some of these issues. It can be inferred that in the context of the Malaysian Telemedicine Act, the doctor-patient relationship is established as a result of the Section 5 of that Act, the mandatory Section 5, on obtaining of the patient's consent before a fully registered medical professional can practice telemedicine. Secondly, in relation to issues concerning breach of professional duty, which may occur as a result of a breakdown of the communication links or compromise of the technical standards, the regulations to the Act prescribed under Section 6(2) are expected to cover aspects of technical standards and quality assurance mechanism. At the moment, we have little guidance from the court because this is a new area, but not so new because the laws were made 23 years ago. Anyway, the general approach of the Telemedicine Act was like this. Number one, they define the terms very broadly. Number two, they give wide powers to the Malaysian Medical Council to specify terms and conditions by which persons may practice telemedicine. Number three, it demands strict standards of informed consent. And number four, to enable the scope of the Act to be expanded, by the making of a wide range of regulations. As a result, there is a considerable flexibility in the application of the present Act. In fact, the Act itself is very short and in fact needs a lot of regulations to fill in the blanks. In view of the fact that the unknown scope of telemedicine, or rather the unknown parameters, the flexibility may be appropriate. Now, several important aspects in relation to determining liability arising from the practice of telemedicine should be addressed, such as the liability of the communication service providers, as well as the medical practitioner practicing telemedicine from outside Malaysia through a fully registered medical practitioner. Okay, this is what you call expert opinion. You get a second opinion from outside Malaysia. Then what happens? Will the local doctor be liable? Further, in appreciating the dangers of electronic information, the regulations to the Act must also extend the scope of Section 2 of the Act in developing effective standards in the area of medical privacy. As we know now, with this app that has been going popular throughout the world, called Zoom, but it's subject to a lot of attacks from hackers. So what will happen if, let's say, you have a communication with a medical professional and your advice got hacked, and then what again happen when let's say somebody connects with you on Zoom, you as a medical practitioner, and then he gets advice. Now, in a normal case, when it comes to the clinic, where it's a face-to-face encounter, when the doctor says, the patient does not put a tape recorder or video cam, because if you do that, straight away the doctor will be on alert and he'll be very careful in the choice of his words. But now, if you say use medicine, if you provide medical services through using this video chat, and the patient decides to tape everything from the first word the doctor say right up to the conclusion of the visit. Now, is that fair on the medical practitioner? Because if that happens, then every medical practitioner will be very concerned and may not be interested to expand their professional services through this Telemedicine Act, because the moment they are live on the video, everything's being said. Even if the doctor makes a joke, that will be recorded and transcribed and then become the source of a court litigation. So there needs to be some protection of the medical practitioner. Whatever is said in the video chat which the patient records should be excluded from evidence in a court of law. You can if you produce a video, the judge will dismiss it and say, "Oh, sorry," because you should protect the professional in the carrying out of his duties. He should be able to say as he so wishes. So this is a overview of the Telemedicine Act. I hope that in the next session we'll be able to look at specific provisions. But thank you for listening to my law chat, this law video. Thank you and goodbye.